Well, I have a few things I wanted to share tonight about all of this, and we've gone into a lot of really great verses about this tonight already, and Richard's presentation had some good practical application from Sheila, had a great reading tonight from this. But there's some things that kind of stand out that, for me, that I wanted to share. And I thought this picture was helpful. Basically, what you're seeing there is a sheep pen. And it's built up with a wall all the way around. Now, sometimes there might be a stone wall like this, but sometimes actual hedges were used with thorns. And there would be a gate at the opening. And the whole purpose there was more to keep things out than to keep the sheep in. There wasn't a lot of trouble with the sheep normally following or being where they should be, but what the fence was really about is keeping out everything bad and protecting the sheep. And as you see here in the picture, you have one gate, and that's to be able to control the flow of what goes in and out of this sheep pen. And you have a shepherd who is the head shepherd there sitting in the gate, and he's the one that controls what happens there. So what this is talking about here is the gate as a means of controlling who can have access to the sheep. And through this gate, the gatekeeper could allow access to those under-shepherds of his to come in and take the sheep that were under their control out into the pasture to feed them, to do the things they need. And at the same time, to keep out any thieves or robbers who would have bad designs on the sheep, or wolves or other animals that would think that they'd like to have a nice meal out of the sheep. So that is really what the gate is all about. It's actually security for the sheep. And if you want to update this, what this is a lot like is perhaps you've been to places or have a job where you have a key card and you have to run that through in order to enter into a door, and that only allows those who are authorized to go in and out. And there's an authority behind that card that you're given. And so the gatekeeper or the head shepherd is like that authority that gives you the card. That's really what's happening with this. So to say that Yeshua is the gate is to say that he's the authority that decides who's going to go in and who's going to go out of that sheep pen. Now, understanding this, I might also say this is about a bigger issue than just sheep. You know, Israel is spoken of as a flock, but it's really people, isn't it? And this is a way that Yeshua is talking about leaders, those who are true appointed leaders and those who have taken it upon themselves, who you might call false shepherds. And he had some of those guys following him around. Because after the whole event that we read about with the blind man, they sent some of the Pharisees around to keep an eye on Yeshua. And they were looking for something that they could get against him. And so when he's talking about this, he is actually speaking to those people around him about these Pharisees, about these religious leaders, and comparing them with himself as the shepherd. That's really what this story is all about. But it's bigger than that because you know what? Those Pharisees of that day, they're long dead. But there are other false shepherds that have come along in the many centuries since then. And Yeshua, he's still the good shepherd. So let's look into this a little more. He says, most certainly I tell you, one who doesn't enter by the gate into the sheepfold, but climbs up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. One thing that I saw as I was going through this is that it's not very consistent in its wording. Now here, the word gate is shown here, and you'll see that it's a Greek word that can mean either door or gate. And what's confusing here is sometimes it says gate and sometimes it says door, but it's really the same word. So I think that is confusing. So what I've done as I've looked at these verses is I've made it all the same thing, which is a gate. You know, a door is like you have in your house where you have an opening, you have an enclosed building, you shut the door and the whole building is closed. A gate is different, right? It's something that usually is like with a fence, and that's what you're talking about with the sheep. So the better word here is gate, and so that's the word I'm using consistently throughout because it's the same Greek word consistently throughout. So we'll just look at that. And now let's think about what Yeshua is saying here. He says, one who doesn't enter by the gate into the sheepfold, but climbs up some other way, the same is a thief or a robber. And the point here is this. Messiah is the one who has authority over the sheep. So if some people decide they want to take authority over the flock, they have to skip Messiah's authority. They have to get around Messiah's authority in some way. And why would they do that? If they had good motives, would they be trying to sidestep around Messiah to get to the sheep? The very fact they're doing that tells you who they are, right? They are thieves and robbers. And that's what he's saying. And there are lots of thieves and robbers, friends, who have devastated the sheep. And this is just a fact. Anyone avoiding the gate is not authorized and is up to no good. Now you can take this from here and look at what has gone on in the world. You can see various institutions, various claims of different religions saying that they're the ones, they truly represent Messiah. But then you look and you see them doing horrible things to the sheep, and it's telling you they're thieves and robbers, they're not following Messiah. Just as an example, and this is horrible, but what about all of these claims of abuse of children by the clergy? Are these thieves and robbers, or are they going in through the gate of Messiah? You know, if you just pay attention to what's happening, you can tell who the thieves and robbers are and who the true shepherds are. It's very clear. The one who enters in by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. Very simple. The authorized shepherds are going to go to the chief shepherd at the gate. He's going to open the gate. They're going to go in. They're going to call their sheep. Hey, Mary, Edna, Josephine, come along. And they're going to come. You know, I've talked about this before, but I was amazed by it then. I'm still amazed by it. My dad was a herdsman of cows. To me, guess what? A cow looks like a cow. I couldn't name the cows. My dad had a name for every one of these cows. He had 150 cows that he milked every day. And he called them all by name. When he would call the cows, they would come to him. It was really pretty amazing. You know, this is something that happens with sheep. You don't see this with cows so much. But that's how it was with my dad, because he truly had a relationship with these cows. And it really got pretty more amazing than that, because my dad used to sing to the cows. And he had different songs for different cows. It was really pretty amazing what happened. And, you know, so from that experience of working with my dad on the farm, I can identify with what it is saying here. And there's no question when my dad went into that barn that he belonged in there. And he had a thing going on with those cows where he knew them, they knew him, and he was authorized to be there. Well, when a shepherd like that comes along, he has no trouble getting that gate open to him because he belongs there. And when he calls out to the sheep listen and they hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. So this is how this works. The gate is opened by the gatekeeper to allow appointed shepherds to enter in to lead out their own assigned sheep. You know, when we're reading this, it's not always talking directly about Messiah. He's the guy that's sitting in the gate right there in the picture. He's the guy they have to go through to get their sheep. But he has appointed shepherds that he will allow to take a certain part of the flock that they care for and give them the things they need. That is what this whole picture about the gate is all about. You see, it's talking about Israel here. This is how Israel works. It's supposed to work. There are appointed under-shepherds under Messiah. And they have portions of the nation, of the flock. And these could be likened to the tribes and then the various divisions of the tribes. And they have appointments and they have to go through Messiah. They have to have Messiah's authority. So you end up having one flock, but really many shepherds to look after all the needs of the flock. That's why you need a gate and a head gatekeeper in order to keep all of that working right. There's order. Now just think, if you were a sheep, what would you want? Would you want to just be stuck in there behind the gate and have nobody on any kind of regular basis coming to get you, coming to take you, make sure you had your water, make sure you had your grass and so on? Or would you like there to be someone to look after you on a regular basis? See, that's how it works, isn't it? That's how it's supposed to work. But what has happened to the sheep? Do they have anything like what I'm talking about? You know, for the most part, they're neglected, they're scattered. And that's how it is, you know, most of the time. Now, this is not a complaint against Yeshua. This is a complaint about the evil shepherds. Well, we have some more here. This whole parable of Yeshua is very interesting because it seems to actually find its origin in Psalm 118. And Psalm 118 is a messianic psalm. It's foretelling the coming of the Messiah. And it says, "Open to me the gates of righteousness. I," it's David talking, who is a shepherd, as we've learned earlier, the shepherd of the nation, "will enter into them. I will give thanks to Yah." So this is actually David as a shepherd essentially saying, open the gate to me because I want to go in and I want to shepherd the sheep. He's an appointed shepherd, and you notice he's asking for the gate to be opened. He's not doing something unauthorized. He's authorized as a shepherd. Then it goes on and says this is the gate of Yahweh. The righteous will enter into it. I will give thanks to you, for you have answered me and have become my salvation. So here the Hebrew word that's translated salvation is the word Yeshua. This is actually a prophecy that Yeshua is the gate of Yahweh. So this is what Yeshua was actually talking about in this parable about being the gate. When he says, I am the gate, this is the gate he's saying. And we know that because it goes on, the very next verse it says, the stone which the builders rejected has become the head of the corner. That's talking about Yeshua, and he himself claimed that verse. The Apostle Peter talks about that verse and others as applying to Messiah. So this is really what Yeshua is saying, and even discussing this, saying, I am the gate, and so on. He's saying, I am the Messiah. But he's saying it in a way that the people who are familiar with the scriptures could understand, and yet the hard-hearted Pharisees would not even make the connection. They would not even understand what he's talking about. It says later they didn't. They didn't understand. But that's really where it all comes from. That's where this all comes from. Well, going on with what he said, whenever he brings out his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. So here you have one of these authorized shepherds comes along, oh, can I go in and get my sheep? The head shepherd says, yes, go ahead. He calls them. They all just come and follow him, and the shepherd takes them to the pasture, takes care of them. They will by no means follow a stranger, but will flee from him, for they don't know the voice of strangers. Those who are truly the shepherds know the sheep, and those who are truly the sheep of Yeshua Messiah know the voice of Messiah. Yeshua spoke this parable to them, but they didn't understand what he was telling them. He's talking there about those Pharisees. They didn't get what he was saying. So the gate of the sheep is also the head shepherd. As you see him sitting right there, he is the gate there in the picture. So I like that. And he is the good shepherd of the sheep. He said that he was the gate. I am the sheep's gate. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep didn't listen to them. He's standing right there talking to the people, and he's telling them, these Pharisees who are here following me around, they are thieves and robbers. That's really what he's saying. But they don't even understand what he's saying. So this principle that he's pointing out, those who came before him are thieves and robbers, this is why the sheep have left false religion in droves and continue to do so, because they come to the point where they realize this is not the voice of the good shepherd, and so they turn away from it. Again, he says, I am the gate. Again, this harkens back to Psalm 118. If anyone enters in by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and will find pasture. And what we saw there in Psalm 18, that's exactly what it says about the gate of Yahweh. He has become my salvation, Yeshua. That's really cool. He says, the thief only comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Is the thief Satan? Yes. How about all of Satan's little helpers? Is that the thief? Anyone that comes in to steal, kill, and destroy is the thief, isn't it? And there's lots of them. Lots of them. Because it has become very, very profitable for a very long time for false shepherds to come in as thieves and kill and steal and destroy and make themselves fat at the expense of the sheep. Very, very different, total different mentality than Yeshua, who says, I came that they may have life and may have it abundantly. You know the thing about Yeshua? He doesn't lie to you. He loves you. He respects you. He gave his life for you, and his purpose is to bless you. He loves you. What about the false shepherds? How do they feel about you? Oh, they say they love you. But so much of the time, what they really love is your praise and your money. And they really don't care much about you. Now, that's not true about every person out there who's a teacher or a spiritual leader, but it's true of way too many, don't you think? Messiah has to be involved. You see, this is the thing. Mere religion, it's not going to work. There has to be a vital connection between Messiah and these shepherds for this to be authorized and real and good, and for Yeshua to truly be involved. Jeremiah 23 tells us what Yahweh has prophesied regarding the shepherds, and it figures in here. Woe to the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, says Yahweh. Therefore, thus says Yahweh, the Elohim of Israel, against the shepherds who feed my people. You have scattered my flock and driven them away, and have not visited them. Behold, I will visit on you the evil of your doings, says Yahweh. I will gather the remnant of my flock out of all the countries where I have driven them, and I will bring them again to their folds, and they shall be fruitful and multiply. I will set up shepherds over them who shall feed them, and they shall fear no more, nor be dismayed, neither shall any be lacking, says Yahweh. So here's the picture, right? False shepherds who should have been taking care of the sheep, instead destroyed and scattered the sheep. That's what happened. And Yahweh is saying, you know what? I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to get after these shepherds. I'm going to bring their evil on their own head. And I'm telling you, we're seeing it happen. We are seeing it happen. What has happened to the regard there used to be for the spiritual leaders? It's a joke now, isn't it? You watch movies, things like this. Aren't these people always a joke? The whole attitude has changed. And it's going to go from being a joke to becoming something far more hostile, because they have brought it upon themselves. And Yahweh is allowing this to come back on their own heads. But at the same time, this is happening in the religious world. What does Yahweh say he's going to do? I will gather the remnant of my flock, he says, out of all the countries. See, he's not going to just abandon his sheep, even though they have been destroyed and scattered. That's when he comes in and he gathers his remnant. We're talking about the remnant of Israel, of course. And he gives them righteous shepherds, under shepherds, who are authorized to go into the sheep pen and to take care of the sheep. So all of that nonsense that we all experienced in all of these different religious organizations, where we went for a time from one to another, to another, to another, trying to find a place where the sheep were being taken care of, only to be abused and scattered about, that is coming to an end for the remnant. Because Yahweh has promised to set up righteous shepherds, so that exactly what Yeshua is describing in this story that we're reading, that's exactly the plan that we're seeing unfolding, that Yahweh is doing. And we're going to see this happen. We're going to see Messiah put this in place, where there are these righteous shepherds, all under one authority, all in good order, under Messiah, taking care of his sheep. And they better do it, because he loves his sheep. And he's really sick of this nonsense from these false shepherds. He says, I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. This is why you can trust Yeshua Messiah. And you can trust his kingdom, because he proved it. He left heaven. You know, even forgetting the rest of it. Can you imagine? Here he is, the Son of God, the creator of the universe, in heaven. He left heaven to be one of us. Doesn't that floor you? That floors me. That's just amazing. But then all the more, look at what he put up with from these people. And even to the point of laying down his life for his flock. You can trust him. He knows your problems. He knows your struggles. He knows how you've been beat up and kicked around. He understands that. That's why he died for you. To be your covering, to be your shepherd. He loves you so much. So much. You can trust him to be your shepherd. What about these false shepherds? It says, he who is a hired hand. Doesn't that explain it? He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who doesn't own the sheep, sees the wolf coming, leaves the sheep, and flees. Of course he does. He never cared for the sheep, right? Wasn't really appointed by Messiah. He's there, it's his career. Any trouble starts coming his way, he's gone. He's gone. So then what happens? The wolf snatches the sheep and scatters them. The hired hand flees because he's the hired hand and doesn't care for the sheep. That just about explains the whole thing, right, of everything that we've seen happen with religion. Tells you the whole story right there. That's got to come to an end. That's what this is telling us. That's got to come to an end. And the time has come for that to come to an end. This is going to turn around. He says, I am the gate. If anyone enters in by me, he will be saved. Only Yeshua can be trusted with our salvation because he loved us enough to lay down his life for us. You know, that's really the message from the book of Isaiah, telling us about what he would come and do for us, and then telling us of his amazing character, his righteousness, his goodness, his self-sacrifice for us. The world is so in need of that kind of a righteous rulership, and nothing else can work. You know, nothing can work. You try and figure a system of government that is going to bless the poor people of the earth. You might come up with a system that's pretty good. I think we did that here in the United States back when the country was founded. It seemed like the republic was going to be a good thing, but you know what? Even back then, the founding fathers said, hey, this only depends on the people being righteous and the leaders being righteous. And as soon as that's gone, the country's gone. And isn't that what's happening? That's what's happening everywhere. That's what's happening in the whole world. More and more, it becomes so clear. The only choice that is going to make a difference is the kingdom. We have reason to believe in the kingdom because we have reason to believe in the king. He says, I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and I'm known by my own, even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. It's talking about fellowship, friends. Fellowship with the good shepherd. You're his little sheep. He's taking care of you every day. You know him. You look to him. You have a problem, you cry out, ah! He's right there. He's taking care of you. He loves you. You know him, he knows you. That's how it works. It's so beautiful, so wonderful. He is the good shepherd. He's the shepherd of our souls. I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep which are not of this fold. And as Brother Richard showed us so well, those other sheep are the house of Israel, the scattered house of Israel. See, the Pharisees who were following him around and those religious leaders, you notice as we go through this, it keeps saying the Judeans, the Judeans, the Judeans. They're Judah, right? They're Judah. It's the house of Judah. The other sheep are what? The scattered house of Israel, right? You would know that if you read all the prophecies about the two houses. So the fact that, unfortunately, the Christian leaders and teachers have for so long said, well, that's the Gentiles, kind of shows they're a little bit shallow on the side of prophecy, of Bible prophecy. They've missed this. Here you have one of the foremost doctrines in Scripture, and they have entirely missed it. Entirely missed it. You can't miss it if you spend time. How many passages of Scripture did Richard read to us about this tonight? That wasn't all of them. You might think it was all of them. It wasn't. There's a whole bunch more. There's no question as to the other sheep and who they are. Now, I'm not saying Gentiles can't come in, because we know they can, and they can be grafted in. But this is talking about the scattered remnant, friends. I must bring them also, and they will hear my voice. They will become one flock with one shepherd. Now, this is a certain concept from prophecy. One flock and one shepherd. Let's take a look at that. Here we have Ezekiel 34. And it goes through here. And I think Sheila mentioned this tonight. And basically, it's Yahweh saying he's against these false shepherds. And then he promises that he will search out his sheep and seek them out. And he says, I will deliver them out of all the places where they have been scattered in the cloudy and dark day. I'll bring them out from the peoples and gather them from the countries and will bring them into their own land, and I will feed them on the mountains of Israel. How vague is that? Do you find that vague? Did you read anything there about a rapture? The hope for the scattered sheep is to be gathered together into one nation and to be taken home to the land of Israel. That's what all the prophets said. Why don't we just forget what the prophets said and listen to Tim LaHaye instead? Or let's not. These same verses go on and says this, therefore will I save my flock, and they shall no more be a prey. I will set up one shepherd over them. Isn't that exactly the words Yeshua used? One shepherd? Where do you think he got that idea? Do you think it could be from these verses in Ezekiel? Do you think when he's saying that he's the one shepherd, that he's this guy? It all fits together. It's about Yeshua and the remnant. That's what it's about. He shall feed them, even my servant David, he shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd. They're one shepherd over the whole flock. The whole flock, the one flock, the renewed flock. Ezekiel 37, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the nations where they are gone, and will gather them on every side and bring them into their own land, and I will make them one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel. Now, isn't this what we talk about here at Zion? Being a nation? Why am I talking about being a nation all the time? It's Yahweh's will for the remnant to be one nation under Yeshua Messiah. How do we live? How do we live like Israel before they had a king? When we were under the judges and everybody did what was right in their own eyes, the scripture says. We don't live like a nation. We don't think like a nation. We don't think about having the common goal of our nation. And when I say we, I mean the collective we, not this we here. We do that. We think like a nation. That's what we're doing here. But overall, the scattered sheep of the house of Israel haven't come to this point where they understand we must all come together as one nation under our one shepherd, Messiah, and his under-shepherds that he appoints. Isn't that really this whole story that we're talking about with the sheepfold and the gate and the shepherds coming to him and saying, oh, please open the door so I can bring my sheep out? Isn't that what he's talking about? One nation. That's it. One king shall be king to them all, and they shall be no more two nations. One nation. I will save them out of all their dwelling places in which they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I will be their Elohim. This is what we're looking at. This is what we're looking at. This is so beautiful. Yeshua was talking about this. It's been there in the book of John all this time. All this time. And it goes on, they all shall have one shepherd. Again, John 10 is talking about this. When Yeshua says one shepherd and one flock, this is what he's talking about. They shall dwell in the land that I've given to Jacob my servant. David my servant shall be their prince forever. One shepherd. In the land. One nation. Prove me wrong. Somebody prove me wrong. You don't believe this? You don't believe that Yahweh is going to gather his scattered sheep out of all the nations of the world and bring them back to Israel? If you don't believe it, it's because you don't believe the Scripture. Because the Scripture is very clear. It's very clear. Yeshua says, therefore the Father loves me because I lay down my life, that I may take it again. I can only imagine how the Father loves his Son. And that love could only be enhanced to think that his Son loves those that he loves so much. He says, no one takes it away from me, but I lay it down by myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. Yeshua wasn't forced to give his life for us. Even something as powerful as the power of Rome was not strong enough to take away his life, except that he gave it up for us. He did what his Father told him. I like this little picture here, because this pictures so much how it is between a shepherd and his sheep. That's who we need to be. You know, if we all love our shepherd the way those sheep love that shepherd, we'll all love each other too. Right? We won't have any trouble being one nation. There's no substitute for love. That's what this is all about. We're going to want to do what he tells us because we know he loves us. He's never going to say anything to us that's not good for us. We can trust him. It's all about love, isn't it? Therefore, a division arose among the Judeans because of these words. Many of them said, he has a demon and is insane. Well, they've said that about me too. Why do people do that when they don't understand something or they feel threatened? He has a demon or he's insane. Others said, these are not the sayings of one possessed by a demon. It isn't possible for a demon to open the eyes of the blind, is it? Well, the voice of reason. Apparently, some of them were beginning to open their eyes to who he really was. One thing you'll see is that though these things are very clear, these things about Messiah, these prophecies of Scripture, the false shepherds don't understand Messiah or anything that he says. They just don't get it. You know, to devote years of your life to those people, you're wasting your time with those people because they do not get it. They don't listen. They don't really hear the voice of Messiah, which makes you wonder, is he really their shepherd? if they don't hear his voice. Well, I wanted to bring this up tonight because it just happens that this portion of Scripture, I think, brings us very naturally to what we've just gone through in the 7th month, looking at the breastplate stones, the order of Israel, the tribes, the leaders, and what is going on to raise up leaders and shepherds for the remnant. And Tsiyon does have a program for this very purpose. We have a process of remnant nation leader candidate intake. Now that might be a little scary to you, but the truth is every single one of the remnant needs to be a leader in something, right? And if you see what I'm saying about a nation and why this is so important, why not step up and be a part of that? So you see that logo on the front page of the website. And I will tell you, this is a fairly rigorous process because, like with the door to the sheep pen, we want to make sure that the only shepherds that go in there are those authorized by Yeshua and for good purposes. So this leadership program is going to be fairly rigorous to make sure that's the case. Why? Because the sheep must be protected. They have been beat up enough. They have been scattered. They have been abused enough. And it's important to make sure that it's truly the under-shepherds of Yeshua Messiah that become the shepherds of Israel, so that we don't have a repeat of the kind of shepherds that Yeshua was dealing with in the 1st century, and really that so many have had to deal with, unfortunately, even down to this day. So think about this, pray about this, and really at any age, any adult person can sign up for this. And wherever you're at, you can make progress from this point. But we really want to help you to become involved. And, you know, some people might think, well, I'm not really a leader, so I don't want to do that. Well, okay, you might feel that way right now, but can you be a volunteer and help? So in that case, you'd want to sign up for this too, because a volunteer will need this same information, will need this same program. So basically what we're doing with this is we're putting into action what Messiah is talking about here in John chapter 10. We're putting it into action. And that's what he told me to do, to put that into action. And he's my shepherd. And so I just want to do what he says. And I feel it. You know, I just really feel this concern that he has for the scattered sheep. And time's moving fast. We need to change our thinking from how it's been in the past, and we need to really think about his nation. We need to think about how much he loves his nation. And we need to get together. We need to get it going. The last thing I want to share tonight is the 23rd Psalm. You know, the Lord was David's shepherd. This is really the secret for every under-shepherd of Messiah, is they themselves must be one of the sheep. And the Lord must be their shepherd. And that's how they know how to be a shepherd, because of how he is a shepherd to them. David wrote, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." I shall not want means I don't need anything else but my shepherd. I don't need anything else. He's all sufficient. Everything I need is in him. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. David was troubled sometimes. You are too. When that happens, our shepherd comes along. He leads us to that peaceful place, doesn't he? His waters of truth wash away all of those concerns, and he restores us. And he fills us with shalom. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. You know, the sheep care about what is right. We don't always do what is right, but we want to. We want to know what is right. We want his help to walk in those paths of righteousness. And he does that. He helps us to do that. He helps us through those struggles we have in order to walk in his righteousness. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. You know, that is an amazing reality when that happens. When you come into a place where you are actually facing death itself, and you have no fear in your heart because you know he's there, then you know the Lord is your shepherd. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. His discipline upon us is a comfort. I'm glad to know that Messiah has drawn a line and says, I don't want my sheep going past that line. That's a comfort to me, to keep me in a safe place. I love that. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. I believe that's so true in my own life. Look at this vast table of spiritual food that Yahweh has brought into my life, that I've shared with all of you, and I have in abundance more to share. And there are enemies that just wish I would disappear. And yet, you know, we meet week after week after week, and we have this abundance from our shepherd. In the presence of our enemies. It's amazing. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. This is the assurance we have, having him as our shepherd. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Forever is a long time. That's the promise. What do we have to worry about? What do we really need? We just need him as our shepherd. That's what we need.
Darwinian evolution. Junk science.
We say that Charles Darwin wrote a book, and it was published in 1859. And his book on the origin of species, which is really not the whole title. It's telling you what he's really saying. It was Darwinism that gave them scientific justification to go in and dominate the so-called savages. That's what evolution is about. Here's a newspaper article from Australia. The headline is "Blacks Slain for Science's White Superiority Theory." Cross out white superiority theory and put Darwinism, because it's the same thing. Look at this map of Africa. See the little light green part? That's the only part of Africa that was not completely colonized by the Europeans. All the other colors you see on there, that's all areas of Africa that were divided up to the different European nations. Why were they there in Africa? To steal everything in Africa. That's why they were there. They were thieves. They were going into a place that did not belong to them, where they were stronger, where they were more powerful, and they were taking what they wanted. That's what they were doing. And they needed a moral justification for that in the eyes of the soldiers that they sent to die there to make them rich. And Darwinian evolution gave them the excuse they needed. It didn't just happen in Africa. Here in the United States, the indigenous people in America were virtually wiped out. And this too was justified by Darwinian evolution.
Often when racist history is cited, such as stories of slavery, colonialism, genocide of indigenous people, or Nazi atrocities, blame is directed towards the Bible and Bible-believing people. However, a closer look at actual documentation points to another culprit behind elitist racist atrocities. That culprit is Darwinian evolution. This obscured fact of history needs and deserves to be revealed. The film, Darwinian Evolution: Junk Science, was made to set this record straight. See it today. See Darwinian Evolution: Junk Science, www.truthpoint.info.